you've heard all the hype about this thing called Claude Code and you're still not sure whether or not you should care, this mini course is for you. Now, most tutorials out there jump straight into a terminal and skip the bigger picture of how things like Claude Code can make you superhuman, whether you're technical or non-technical. And for this video specifically, I'm aiming to empower and upskill as many self-identifying non-technical people as possible. Because while Claude Code did start and continues to be a developer tool, it's quickly evolving into something so accessible that practically anyone can take advantage of it if they know what to do, what buttons to press, and how to structure projects. So in this course, I'm going to break down what Claude Code is in plain English. And through me explaining that, you'll be able to better understand why Claude Code is a huge paradigm shift compared to all the other vibe coding tools and context engineering tools that are currently out there. But aside from the conceptual, I'm going to walk you through how to set up and use Claude Code step by step, and I'll do my best to make as many things make sense as I possibly can. And last but not least, you'll leave this video with a free mega guide of how to use Claude Code, some common commands, and enough of a cheat sheet to get you up and running, whether you're technical or non-technical. If you're ready for step one of becoming more superhuman, let's jump in. All right, so this is the lay of the land for our entire mini course, where we're going to go from understanding why Claude Code is so hyped right now, and most importantly, how to tactically use it. Very similar to something like a video game, wherever there are cheat codes in the process, instead of having separate videos just for cheat codes, I'm going to weave in any cheat codes or ways to make things easier as much as I can while we go through all the steps, both the conceptual ones and the technical ones. Now, what is all the fuss about this thing called Claude Code? So on the face of it, it's very similar conceptually to other AI coding platforms out there like Cursor, Windsurf, Code, and the rest of the tens of other alternatives. And to be frank with you, I haven't touched Claude Code up until this month, because I usually have a personal motto, especially in the generative AI space, where if something or someone is very much overhyped or in trend, I usually stay away from that trend as long as possible until I see whether or not it has some legs that's worthy of me actually shifting the way I do things or shifting the tools I use. So the reason why I have this Game of Thrones picture here is when that came out years ago, I waited through season 1, season 2, and season 3 before I had the urge to actually go and invest, because I saw that there was some form of longevity in that series. Now, if you've ever watched it and you know how it ends, don't worry, this is not how this tutorial is going to end. It's going to end a lot brighter. Sorry for the spoiler alert. But regardless, once I realized what Claude Code could do, then I understood why it's truly a step change. And just as a disclaimer, this is not a sponsored video. I hate changing tools. I hate switching stacks. So it has to be something very compelling for me to do so. And once again, we ask the question, what is all the fuss about this tool? Now, I'm going to have a lot of visuals here. I made them primarily for myself, but if you are a visual person, I hope they help you. Claude allows you to create what are called sub-agents. So there's all kinds of abuse of the word agent in this entire space. There are workflows that are literally A to B that we call agentic. There are chatbots that we call agents. And then there are things that are actually semi-agentic. Let's say an end-to-end workflow with a series of AI agent nodes and sub-agents. In the land of Claude Code, we are one step further on that agentic scale, where I won't say that they have full autonomy or they can run completely maniacal on their own with no human intervention, but we are definitely closer to that point. So you can see here, you can not only spin up different agents in Claude to help you accomplish different tasks, but what's really important is that they all operate in parallel. And I'll tell you why that's important. So typically, in using something like Cursor or Windsurf, when you want to build something, let's say you want to build a to-do list app or a finance tracker, name anything that's easy for you to conceptualize. It's typically taken one step at a time. So you have a to-do list and you go through that to-do list and check off one thing after the other. And what happens is, if you're using an AI coding platform like Cursor, where it's much more sequential in nature, you'll realize that if you're trying to do very big tasks and you're not being very efficient in the way you're executing those tasks, that's where you have a conversation that gets short consistently, and you have to keep restarting the operation, and you'll notice that you're always ramming different parts of what's called a code base, which is basically where all the code and information lives, and then you get this suboptimal conversation where sometimes you can build things, but for some reason you keep spinning on certain areas. Now with Claude Code, when you spin up these sub-agents, each one technically has its own fresh blank slate context window. And what's cool is, as of this recording, Anthropic released a 1 million context window for Claude Sonnet 4, which is a huge change. Up until now, Claude has always been limited, even though it's been such a great coding partner, at using only 200,000 context window, which if you're trying to generate something or have a simple back and forth conversation is more than sufficient. But once you start building and investing in the features of a production level web application or any application of any sort, you'll notice that not having additional context basically hinders your ability to keep moving forward. If you're just using Claude to build some form of application that's pretty simple, or having a normal back and forth conversation, 200,000 tokens is more than enough to get you there. But if you want to be able to build production level code, having something like a 1 million context window gives you a lot more breathing room, a lot more bandwidth to go back and forth and get to the crux of not only planning, but also building multiple features in the same thematic area or domain area in one shot. So from an experience standpoint, you write better code without you writing the code. You're just using natural language prompts to try to execute the next part of the workflow. But once it actually accomplishes the thing, one, it's really good at showing you its work, meaning the to-do list, and two, you have a longer shelf life for your conversation before the language model begins to really hallucinate and you need to begin a new session. Not only that, I'm going to show you very shortly what are called slash commands that will allow you to do things like summarize your conversation or make it more compact so you can keep having that conversation, especially if you're in the middle of it or in the zone, so you don't have to restart from scratch. Now, if all of this is new to you, then you might be asking a very astute question, which is what happens to all of the other tools on the market? The Lovables, the Bolts, the Replets, the Base 44s, the insert name of brand new tool that's come out in the past few weeks. Being able to use Claude Code doesn't necessarily negate being able to use these tools to go from 0 to 20 to 30%. The key thing here is that it doesn't have to be either or. I see a world where for someone that is less technical or non-technical, you can use these tools to go from 0 to 30, 40%. And once you're there, within a few clicks and copy pastes, you can export the project from these platforms to something like Claude Code to keep going and really take your project to the next level without having to worry about spaghetti code being generated, without you being able to be involved in every part of the process. Because while all of these tools, and more tools will come out in the future, to shortcut this entire process I'm about to show you, if you know how to actually manipulate Claude Code in its essence, at its root, then everything related to these tools will be so easy for you to manipulate. Because you'll know that you'll have this skill set that will allow you to push these platforms as far as they'll naturally allow you to build whatever you're trying to build. And then you know you can export it to something like Claude Code and take it to production level. And if I were to guess as to where we're going in the next 6 to 12 months, I would imagine that all of these tools will begin to compete in the making software on demand arena, where something like Framer is right now in web development, where if you compare it to things like Wix and Webflow and WordPress, it makes really pretty websites very quickly. So I think that the market eventually will have a monopoly where you have one mega tool that can go from 0 to 100%. But until we get there, we're still dealing with language models, which hallucinate, have scaling problems, are expensive to run, etc. I think we will have a bifurcated market where there will be from 0 to 30 kind of tools that can maybe get you to some semblance of 100 slower. And then you'll have these tools like Claude Code, where if you know the recipe and the blueprint to use it properly, you can go from 0 to 100, from 20 to 100. You'll have that skill set or that foundation to do whatever you want. Now, if you put your finger in the wind and you let YouTube decide for you whether you should use Claude or Cursor, you'll see two main schools of thought. One that says, you know what, Cursor has been around for a while, they have staying power, they allow you to talk to all the different models. And by the way, if you don't know what Cursor is, it's basically another AI coding tool, but the main difference is it is a wrapper around every other language model, like Claude, like OpenAI, like Gemini, while Claude is, for the most part, optimizing for Claude models. Some folks will favor this, some folks will favor this. Over time, features will come out. You'll have one side of the aisle say that Claude killed Cursor, and then Cursor killed Claude, and this will continue as debate, but my opinion is, don't worry about the noise. We are not attached to tools. We're not on team A or B. We are attached to outcomes. So as of right now, Claude Code has evolving infrastructure and tools and capabilities, and most importantly, amazing models that help you build faster. And I say this as someone who has used Cursor ever since it came out, meaning I have a bias to want to go that side. But right now, it seems like it's faster to get to my outcomes using Claude Code. So I don't care about the debate. I'm going to use the tool that's going to get me there faster. And one more thing on this. If you're ever betting on which tool is going to win, you will go crazy because we can't really forecast 12 to 18 months out. But what we can see is usually 1 to 3 months ahead. Where right now, the momentum behind Anthropic pushing new updates to Claude Code on top of the community around it, trying to build as many features as possible to make it as accessible to everyone as possible, I am betting on Claude Code, at least for the short term. And just like everything I keep preaching, I'm going to reevaluate in 1 to 3 months, and if I have to shift my stack again, I will. But there's a couple reasons myself why I'm betting on Claude Code. Is we talk a lot about MCP, which went from 3 letters that nobody understood, that if you're not familiar with what it means, by the way, I'll explain it just in a bit, but it went from something that was very ambiguous to now it's a commonplace word that we use in place of, let's say, HTTP, which was for websites. And Anthropic are the inventors and pioneers of it. And now other industry leaders like OpenAI and Gemini have supported this infrastructure. So knowing that they not only came first, but they're the ones that built it, on top of being literally one of the best coding language model providers since day one, gives me more confidence that if I had to bet on a horse, Claude Code would probably be the horse of choice. Now, even though I'm breaking it down, you might be staring at the screen and saying, Mark, you said the words code and editor, and both of those words scare me. I don't know if I'm ready for this yet, even if you break down the tutorial amazingly. You do have alternatives, meaning we have new tools coming out every day. Let's say like GenSpark Super Agent, that's come up with something that's called the AI Developer, which is basically a very Claude Code-like platform that allows you to ask for something, as you would on the other platforms I showed you above, and then it will build you a platform with the to-do list style that Claude Code does, and it will help you go from 0, 30, 40%, maybe even 100%, depending on the complexity of your platform. So if you feel in watching this tutorial that you need something to help you warm up to the ideas I'm about to show you, then you always have alternatives like this on the market, and I'm imagining that in the next few months, more and more wrappers around Claude Code or things that are very similar to Claude Code will come out to make it even more easy to vibe code using this kind of stack. And even with the open source community, they've created something called Claudia, which is a wrapper on top of Claude Code that allows you to interact with it like you would ChatGPT, so you don't have to learn the commands and the prompts that I'm about to show you. So there's different ways that you can de-intimidate this for yourself, but I would say that if you learn the source, the root, then you can do whatever you want after. But if you understand the root, then everything that comes out won't overwhelm you because you can always go back to first principles if need be. Now that pretty much wraps up the yappy part of this mini course. I'm going to just end off with just defining what Claude Code is in terms of what it can do and how you can use it. So in terms of the what, we've already gone through that. In terms of the old way, you would have to write Python scripts or use code from ChatGPT or Claude to help you write Python or JavaScript. You might have had to learn these tools or learn how they actually operate and learn what the heck a terminal is, a very ugly white or black box that you have to interact with to install things and leverage things called Bash, which is basically a language that your computer uses to install and manage files, folders, and packages on your computer. Most importantly, you had to manually either hire someone to debug for you, or you had to debug yourself and Google all types of errors. In the new promised land, you can now offload a lot of things to Claude Code, from writing scripts, to building websites, to building platforms, and most importantly, I'm going to say this with an underline, you can rebuild a lot of AI tools that you currently pay subscriptions for. Now, I know that's been a promised fever dream from a lot of the vibe coding tools out there, but this can actually do it. I have physically built software that I pay for on a monthly basis within Claude Code and been able to cancel those subscriptions. One small example is I wanted to rebuild a local transcription tool where I can take voice notes from meetings that I just upload and or I make notes to self and just be able to upload it from my iPhone and auto ingest it in a software where I can just drag and drop Everything gets transcribed locally for security reasons, and then it creates a nice little report about that meeting. It took almost 45 minutes for Claude Code to understand where to find transcription software, which is the cheapest to use, what is the fastest way to build it, and most importantly, it figured out how to build the most efficient type of software for my hardware, my RAM, so I can run it really quickly. One of the best features of Claude Code is it really helps you do the planning process the best way possible. So help me plan is typically an afterthought with a lot of different platforms. But Claude even has different modes where it's like planning mode, where it uses the most powerful model, which is Claude Opus, to help you construct a beautiful, what are called PRD files, which is a product requirement document. And this is the equivalent of you having an AI product manager or project manager, depending on what you're trying to build, that comes up with a list of everything that needs to be done, how it should be done, and most importantly, in what order it should be done. And what's awesome is, whether you are a developer or non-developer, when you lean on AI to help you plan how to build this app, as you build over and over again, you begin to learn by osmosis all of these micro software engineering principles that become familiar to you over time, even if you don't have an engineering background. If you're starting from scratch, I fully understand and empathize that it will take maybe longer for you to get used to it. But it's the fact that you're actively learning something that typically in the past, we've had to passively learn through courses, textbooks, and hands-on exercises that were very boxed in. They weren't real world problems. But in this case, you always can tackle a project that's going for a real world problem that's very meaty, and then you break it down with AI, and then you build with AI, and you're just there to kind of like manage and give feedback as to whether or not it accomplished the tasks that you originally set up. As a quick summary, Claude Code is an AI assistant that can help you actually do things from writing code to organizing files to fixing problem, and basically having a developer that definitely costs you sometimes an arm and a leg, but for the most part is pretty efficient if you know how to use it efficiently. One thing you'll realize from this video is you can use Claude Code for pretty much everything, not just web applications, not just vibe coding. If you are unhappy with the world of OpenAI's ChatGPT after the GPT-5 debacle, and you want to build your own custom GPTs that really scale, you can build your own version of ChatGPT projects or custom GPTs or even Claude projects within Claude Code. You can create workflows. You can create automations that don't even need things like Zapier, Make.com, or N8N. You can have the custom code do the automation for you. But if you do want to do other things, like, for example, building something that's like Claude, or build a platform like a custom GPT where you can white label it, resell it, use it for onboarding, what have you, you can do that as well. And you can even, if you've seen my other videos, let's say on using Cursor with an N8N MCP to build N8N workflows, you can do that within Claude Code. And if you've watched my videos before, you'll know that Claude is very exceptionally talented at being able to generate what's called JSON, which is the file structure needed to create these workflows without you having to manually make them yourself. So without overselling it, Claude Code opens a whole new world and a brand new portal where you can build all kinds of things. And if you've seen in other tutorials where someone has to log in and then quickly goes over installing something or installing a software or a package or going back and forth and debating with AI on some weird errors, you can offload a lot of that to Claude Code if you allow it access to things like your terminal and your computer. So it can go from planning to realizing what software is needed to installing that software to then resolving any issues that come as a result of trying to install that software, and then it gets installed and then used right away. All right, and at this point of the video, if you want to take a quick breather, we're going to actually try and install Claude Code on your computer so you can get up and running right away. So what you want to
Claude Code with Opus 4.5 is the greatest AI coding tool on planet Earth, but only if you use it the right way. In this video, I'm going to go through every single as someone who's been building with Claude Code for 12 hours a day for the last year, in this video, I'm going to go through every single pro tip there is, from how to set it up all the features, and how to build an entire application from beginning to end, even if you've never coded a day in your life. Whether you're a Claude Code Pro or a stone cold beginner, you're going to learn a ton in this video if you stick with me to the end. Let's lock in, leave a like if you want more videos like this, and let's get into it. So starting out with why Claude Code is the best if you're brand new to it, feel free to skip to the next section if you want to get the setup. All the chapters are down below. Feel free to skip around, jump wherever you need to learn. But why it's the best, one, it's the simplest to use. You just give it commands, it writes code for you. That's it. There's nothing more. There's nothing less. It is just a prompting tool, and that is it. It is so simple, which makes it very beginner friendly. Instead of having 20 different features and an entire IDE, it is just a text box where you enter commands and the AI agent does things for you. And despite being so beginner friendly, it is still by far the smartest tool out there, especially since Opus 4.5 launched, which is, in my opinion, the greatest leap in AI technology since GPT-4 came out. It is so beyond leaps and bounds smarter than any other coding model out there. You tell it what to do, it does it without errors, it does it without flaws, and it does exactly what you want to do. And maybe my favorite part about all this by far when it comes to Claude Code is it is the most proactive. You give it a command, it understands the context and nuance of what you want it to do, and it goes and it does extra things. It builds out those extra features. It asks you questions. Wait, did you mean this or did you want to do this? It truly understands what you want to do in a deep level, and it proactively builds out exactly what you want. All of this combined makes for, in what my opinion is, the best, not only AI coding tool out there, but just by far the best AI tool there is. And if you're going to learn just one AI coding tool, in my opinion, Claude Code's the one. I'm not getting paid by Claude Code. No one from Anthropic even really talks to me, to be quite honest with you. I just love this tool and use it every single day, and that's why I teach so many people about it. So let's start with setup. There are 3 ways to use Claude Code: a IDE extension, so an extension like in Visual Studio or Cursor, the desktop Anthropic Claude app, as well as the CLI, which is kind of the classic way of using it, which is just right in your terminal. There are pros and cons to each. I prefer the CLI, and for this video, we'll be using the CLI. The reason being is a fewfold. There's the extension, which I was actually recommending for the last few months and recently changed. The extension has a great GUI, a great user interface, which makes it very easy to use. It has all the basic features of Claude Code. It just lacks some advanced functionality we'll talk about. Then there's the desktop app. This is the Claude desktop app that is actually really cool and really neat. It has the best user interface by far for Claude Code. It allows you to spin up cloud agents, local agents, which is like, it's basically the best AI agent manager out there. It is the best for efficiency, so working on multiple projects at once. It is the best with Claude skills. One issue though, it has no plan mode, which is a major oversight by Anthropic. I'm sure that's coming soon, but that lack of plan mode really kills the experience, which is why we're going with the CLI, which has the worst user interface because it's the terminal, and no one really likes using the terminal unless you're a total nerd. But despite having not the strongest user interface and having no cloud agent management, it has the best features and functionality of all 3 of these, and that is enough for it to be the winner and earn my recommendation for best way to use Claude Code. Its plan mode is just smarter than the other formats. When you use the plan mode in the CLI, it's just different. It asks you more questions. It feels like it understands you on a deeper level. It feels smarter. It makes less mistakes. I don't know what it is, but the CLI harness for Claude is the best in the entire game, and so despite it having the worst user interface, we are going to be using the terminal for this, and I'll show you how to set that up next. So real quick, going into a couple more basics. If you already got Claude Code set up, feel free to skip to the next chapter where we start building the app for this, but I wanted to make a video that's inclusive of all beginners and everyone interested in Claude Code. So to set it up, you can just go to Claude Code, the website, take this command right here. We're going to put that into the terminal. And there's also just a real quick cover the pricing. You have 3 plans. You can use Claude Code with Claude Opus on the Pro plan for $17. You probably won't even have enough usage to build one app, but maybe you start with the $17 plan just so you get a feel for Claude Code and see if this life is for you, this Claude Code life. The Max plan, I know a ton of people on the Max plan, the $100 month plan, and they still get really good usage. So you're totally totally fine then starting with the $100 plan and upgrading to 200 when you need the usage. That's totally fine and acceptable. But if you like Claude Code and you end up using it any sort of amount to build even a single app, you will probably end up on one of these two tiers. And let me tell you this, it is more than worth it. It is the best $200 I spend a month by far. You shouldn't be comparing these $200 to like the amount you're spending on like Netflix or like HBO Max. All those SaaS tools you compare that to, you're comparing it to things that drain your time and energy and money and don't actually add anything to your life. This is the equivalent of like hiring a developer for $200 a month. Typically, developers cost you like $10,000, $15,000 a month. So this is actually an incredibly great deal if you think about it with that perspective. And that's the way I think everyone should be thinking about it. So this is actually a steal for what you're getting. So now let's go into actually setting it up. What we're going to be using here to set it up is actually Visual Studio Code, which is a completely free platform to use. I'll leave the link down below for Visual Studio Code. This is where we're going to actually house the CLI itself. So if you're on Mac and you hit Control-tilde, this opens up the terminal. I actually like having this on the right-hand side so you have a little bit more vertical space. And what we're going to do is, if you've never set up Claude Code before, copy and paste that command from the last website we were on, paste that into here, that'll install it. Once you have that installed, you can hit Claude, just type that in, hit enter, say, yes, I trust this folder, and you are good to go. From here, and actually you probably should have done this first, we want to open up a new project, so hit Command O. If you're on Mac, that'll let you set up a new project. We're going to go into Documents here. We're going to set up a new folder. I'm going to call this Project Management, and I'm going to hit Create, and we're going to actually build out today an entire project management app. I love building apps that you can use in your day-to-day life, and one app everyone should build, even if it's your first project, is a project management app where you can enter in tasks, track your progress on whatever project you're working on. This will make it a lot easier to build more projects in the future. So work with me here, do what I'm doing, pause the video if you need, set up a folder, project management, hit open, and we are good to go. We're going to need to just open up Claude one more time. So Control-tilde, panel position right, and Claude, and hit enter, and boom, just like that, we are in Claude Code. So by default, you should be in Opus 4.5. That is the greatest AI coding model in the history of mankind. If it doesn't say Opus 4.5 right there, make sure you hit /model and then select default. That'll give you Opus 4.5. So we are going to be on that. We are in Opus 4.5, which is the fastest, smartest, best AI coding model ever. If you hit / here, you're going to see a lot of the different / commands you can use. There are a ton of them. I'm going to go through just a couple that I think are super important. There's a few important ones in here you probably want to know. /clear clears all the context. So we're going to use that every time we build out a new feature so that Claude is nice and snappy and fast. You'll probably want to use /login if you've never used Claude before. That'll log into your account so you can validate that you're on a tier. /rewind will actually undo code as you go. So if you ever make a mistake, you can go back to a last checkpoint. /security review is awesome. We'll use this in the video as well. It sends up an agent that actually reviews your app for security. Security is super important, especially when you're vibe coding apps. So you want to make sure you know about that. And then /stats tell you about your Claude Code usage to see if you're near any limits. Those are the important / commands you need to know. Those are the only ones basically I use. What we're going to do from here is we're going to use plan mode. Plan mode is an incredible feature in Claude Code. If you do Shift Tab, you will see plan mode on. This is going to build out a plan for whatever we want to build. What makes Claude Code so good is it builds the best plans, the best to-do lists that help you execute the tasks you want to build. And plan mode is the best way to do this. Before you build any big features, before you build out your kind of first prompt for your app, you always want to use plan mode, because what that will do is cause Claude to think deeply about what you want to do, build a plan, run it by you, ask any questions it has, and let you approve that plan. So we want to be using plan mode when A, we're starting a new project, or B, we're building out any big features. So here is the beginning prompt we're going to use to build our project management app. I want to build a project management app for vibe coders. It should be a Kanban board that also has a to-do list next to it and a note-taking area. The Kanban board should have to-do, in progress, and complete, and have cards for the tasks you can drag and move around. Make it a clean, simple, dark mode interface that doesn't look AI generated. Right after this, once we get V1, I'm going to go into actually designing this, making it look beautiful. There's a couple tips and tricks I want to go through with that, but this is the initial prompt. I also put it down below. You can paste that in here. I'm also going to say I want to use Next.js for this and local storage. Next.js, very popular web technology we're going to use for this, and local storage is just going to store all the to-dos and notes locally before you implement a database. I'm going to hit enter on that, and Claude is going to get to work. This is your AI agent. That really is all Claude Code is at the end of the day, is just an AI agent that just happens to code very well. You can use Claude Code to do anything you want on your computer. You can have it go do research on the web, anything you want. It just happens to be very, very good at writing code. So it's saying, I'll help you build a project management app for Vibe coders. Let me first explore the current directory to understand what we're doing. So it's getting to work. It's exploring the code we already have, which is absolutely none. Then it's using a front-end design skill. This is a specialized Claude skill, which is a super powerful feature of Claude Code, which I'll show you in a second, that actually makes it a design expert. So I'm going to show you how to set this up, but Claude skills are an amazing feature that really no other AI tool has, where you can actually plug in very specific skills, including UI and design skills. So it makes it way better. So after I show you V1 in this app and what this interface looks like, I'll show you exactly how to plug in that design skill. So everything Claude Code builds for you looks amazing. This is one of my favorite parts about Claude Code's plan mode that you only get in the CLI. And this is when it starts asking you questions about what you want to build. So we gave it a prompt. We said, hey, can you build this for us? Now it's specifying some things and making some recommendations for what we can build. What should the app be called? I suggested Flow State, but you might have something else in mind. I like that. Flow State? That's a good name. Let's do Flow State. Should cards on the Kanban board have any extra fields beyond title and description? Let's keep it simple for now. Maybe we add priority and everything else after. I'm going to go down and hit next. I love how it's multiple choice. It makes it really easy for you to make decisions. Anytime you're talking to someone important, always make it multiple choice. So it's very easy for them to make decisions. Claude Code understands that because they're talking to you and me. They know we're important. So it gives us multiple choices. How should a note panel work? Single scratch pad or multiple notes? Let's make it multiple notes. So you can save multiple notes. And then we're going to submit our answers. It specified some things. It helped us come up with new ideas. And it's just awesome. It's just awesome to work with the Claude Code plan mode. This is one of the biggest reasons why I think Claude Code is the best AI coding tool on planet Earth. All right, so here's the amazing plan it built for us. It gave us an entire overview of the Kanban style project, an entire aesthetic direction about the project, which is amazing. It even tells the exact colors it's going to use, the tech stack so you can see what it's built on. And listen, even if you're not technical, just read through it real quick so you kind of understand what it's going to build out. The data model, the layout structure. And again, this is getting technical, but it doesn't matter quite as much. Just read it. It'll give you a feel for the project, how it's working. And as you go, you'll actually get more and more technical naturally. So let's do this. Let's go in and let's say yes and auto accept edits. I always auto accept edits just because it is so smart. It is so good. And it really doesn't mess up for me at all. I fully trust Claude Code to build what we need. So feel free as it goes to say yes and yes, don't ask again. It really is not capable of doing anything to mess up here. There's no stories online of Claude Code messing things up and deleting a whole bunch of stuff. You really are free to trust it. If you really want to prove step by step, you can go right ahead and do that. But I have never found issues with giving it full access to do whatever it needs. All right, looks like V1 finished. When your Claude Code is done working, it'll give you a localhost address to go to. You can then go to that localhost address and let's see what it looks like here. This is actually awesome. Let's see, I'll move this over here. Flow State, quick tasks. So we can add quick tasks, plan out the app, market the app. We have our to-do list board, so we also have to tweet about the app, add that there. Ooh, and it gives us a nice card, which we can drag around. That is awesome. I love this UI. I'm going to be honest, I'm not just saying this so I can hype up this video and keep it exciting. I actually think this is the best UI an AI has ever built for me for an app. This is beautiful. It is clean, simple. I don't think anyone would guess that this is AI generated. There's no blue or purple gradients everywhere. And then we have this note section. This looks amazing. So let me do this. Now that we have what the V1 of this looks like, your app might not look anything remotely as good or close to this. The reason being is I'm using a very particular Claude skill. It is a UI design skill. Let me show you how to set that up so you start getting awesome looking UIs like this. So here's how you make your AI build way better interfaces. That is with the Claude design skill. So I'm going to put the link to this tweet down below. Make sure to go to it. This has the 2 commands you need to install this Claude skill. And basically all Claude skills are plugins for Claude that teach it new skills. And what these 2 commands will do will teach it a skill that shows it how to make professional looking user interfaces. So go down below, go to this tweet, pause now, grab these 2 commands, and then you're going to go into Claude Code, paste them right in here. Hit enter on the first one, hit enter on the second one, and you'll have the design skill installed. Now what you can do is you can say, redesign my UI using the new design skill, hit enter, and it will redo your UI to make it look a lot better. Because if you didn't have this design skill, my guess would be what you're looking at here is a whole bunch of blue and purple gradients that are pretty hard to the eyes. So doing that will make this look way better, much closer to mine, which I think this is very professional looking, almost linear-esque. I even like the fonts. The fonts look very modern. So make sure you do that. Your UI will look way better. So let's move on. Let's build out more features here. I'll go through how to prompt to get better features, and I'll go into little tips and tricks here. So basically, when it comes to prompting, you don't need advanced prompting techniques. You don't need to structure it in crazy ways. Everyone on planet Earth will give you different frameworks for prompting where you have to include a whole bunch of context. No. It's very simple. Just be very clear and upfront about what you want to build. So for instance, I want to make it so we have priorities in each one of these tasks on the Kanban board. So we'll just be very clear and straightforward. I want to add priorities to the tasks in the Kanban board. So high level, exactly what we want. Now we can give it little details about what we want in there as well. I want to make sure I can assign different priority levels. Here's the thing I also like to do often is I like to say anything else you want to add, question mark. You can treat this very much like a creative partner. I like to ask tons of questions like that. What else would you add? What else would you do here? What do you think about this? What's your opinion? Claude Opus 4.5 has better taste than any other AI model I've ever used. So it actually will give you really, really good recommendations. It will be honest with you. It'll be honest about when things stink or when you shouldn't implement things. So let's do this. Let's send that. Make sure you ask questions like, what else would you add? What else would you do here? You'll get a lot of really nice recommendations. So this is great. Even though we're not in plan mode, it's still going to ask us really cool questions. So how should priorities be displayed on cards? A colored dot, a side border, or a badge or a pill? Let's do a colored dot. I like that. Subtle and minimal. Want me to add any of these while I'm at? This is what makes Opus 4.5 so great, is it's super proactive. We talked about this earlier. So we just asked about adding priority, but it's like, hey buddy, anything else you want me to add here? I can add due dates, archive columns, filter by priority, keeping it simple. Yeah, let's add a couple. This is multiple choice. We can say due dates, and we can say archive column, and we can say filter. But let's add all of them, filter by priority as well, and let's hit submit, and it's going to do all of that for us. It's super proactive. It comes up with ideas on the fly. It gives us recommendations. It's truly the first time I feel like I have like a senior developer working for me rather than like an intern, right? It's little things like that no other AI model, that no other AI tool does, that really makes it feel special working with this tool. And it's also what makes it so beginner friendly is you can come in here with no ideas, no idea what to do, and it will kind of guide you through building it out. Again, I'm not being paid by Anthropic. This isn't a sponsored video. I'm just really passionate and love this tool a ton and really think everyone should be using it. All right, looks like it is all done. They added a whole bunch of features for us. Let's go over here. Let's give this a refresh. And it looks like we are getting errors. This is good. This is good. So now I can show you how to debug. In the rare instance that Opus 4.5 gives us errors, here's how you debug. It's very simple, very straightforward. You get an error like this, you copy it, you go back into Claude, you say, hey, I'm getting an error, and then you paste, and then you hit enter, and here we go. It'll just go and fix it. Very, very simple. Oh, it looks like it is a stale cache issue. So all we need to do is just basically hard refresh the page and it'll fix it. All right, so it wasn't Claude Code's fault, but either way, it's telling us how to fix what we're seeing, which is great. All right, so the cache is cleared. Let's pull this open here, and boom, look at that. Looking good. Let's add a task. Oh, and look, we can do the priority, low, medium, high, market our app. Let's see here. Yep, we can click and it moves it around. I like the colors. All the colors kind of match. I really like the theme of the entire app. It really has extremely good taste. And we can move it around and you can see the different priorities here. We can filter. That looks great. I love that. That's cool. So from here, you can add any features and functionality you want. But how do you take it to the next level? How do you start giving it a database so you can store all the data, right? Maybe we want to put our tasks in the database so it stays consistent across all our sessions. Maybe we want to add auth. Maybe we want to add pricing. Well, here's what you got to do for all that. The first thing you're going to want to do is add this to GitHub. If we're going to host our app, if we are going to allow other people to use it, we're going to want to have it on GitHub. So make sure you go and sign up at github.com. You're going to want to start a new repository, give it a name. We can call it flow state, make it a private repository, and create that repository. This is going to give you a URL where you can upload this code. Take that URL, then we're going to come back into Claude Code and we're going to say, add all this code to GitHub, and then paste in the URL it gives you. This will then have Claude Code go take all the code, put it onto GitHub. This is where your code will be hosted and stored so we can do things like put it on the web, allow other people to use it. This is a really important step. It's also going to back everything up just in case your computer gets wiped. All the code will be stored on the web. So you want to make sure you have this on GitHub. From there, you can implement other tech, right? So if you want a database, this is where all the data in your app is going to be stored, like the tasks or the users. You can use Supabase for this. This can also be your auth. So this is what an entire web app looks like from the front end, which is what you see, that's Next.js, to the back end and database, that's where the data is stored, to the hosting. So this is what's going to actually host your website so people can visit it. You're going to use Vercel, right? So Vercel will be able to host it for free. You can put the code there. It links to your GitHub. So you can sign up for these services. Auth is going to allow the users to sign in. You can use Supabase Auth for that. Payments, I like to use Stripe. Stripe's the easiest to use, easy to implement. And all of this, you can screenshot this here. You can just go to Claude Code and say, hey, I want to set up Supabase as the database. How do I do that? And Claude Code will walk you through it. I want to put this on Vercel so people can visit our app. How do I do that? Claude Code will walk you through it. I want to implement Stripe so people can start paying me for the app so I can start making money. Claude Code will work you through that. That's the best part. Anything you don't know how to do, Claude Code will walk you through it. The mindset 99% of people have when doing things like this is, oh, I don't know how to do this. I'm going to roll over and die and give up, right? That's not the mindset you want to have. You want to be autodidactic. What does autodidactic mean? It's your ability to work on your own and just figure things the F out, right? And now that you have Claude Code, you need to be autodidactic. Anytime you don't know how to do something, anything you get confused about, you have super intelligence at your fingertips. You go into Claude Code and say, hey, I don't know how to set up a database. What the heck do I do here? And it will teach you how to do it. There's nothing you don't know how to do anymore. Claude Code teaches it all. So after you get your app in the shape you want, you built out the features you like, you're ready to implement the database and allow more users to use the app, make sure you screenshot this, pause this here, and anything you see here, you say Claude Code, how do I implement Supabase? How do I implement Vercel? And it will walk you step by step very simply on how to do it. I go into a lot of detail and walk you through everything you need to know about Supabase and Vercel and payments in the Vibe Code Academy. It's my private community. Feel free to sign up for that. I do weekly calls there, answer your questions. You can DM me there. Anything you want. Link for the Vibe Coding Academy is down below. Also, if you've learned anything, make sure to leave a like, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications. All I do is make amazing videos about AI. And also leaving a like will just let me know you want more videos like this. I've been told by a lot of people my Claude Code videos are great, so I'm going to make a lot more videos about Claude Code. Let me know down in the replies what part of everything I showed you you want to see more of, whether it's, hey, show me more how to build. Maybe I want to build out iOS apps. Show me how to set up databases. Anything like that you want me to do super deep dives on, I'll do that. I kind of went a mile wide and an inch deep here. So let me know what you want me to go a mile deep on, and I'll make sure to make videos about that. You can do that down in the replies below. From here, if you follow these steps and you host it on Vercel, you'll have a full web app that anyone can use. You'll have a full app live. And even if you've never coded before, you'll have an app you can send to your friends and family members. And at Christmas, they'll be like, oh my God, that's incredible. You're the smartest person I ever met in my life. How'd you do that? And you can be like, oh, I'm just really smart. But in reality is you had super intelligence, AKA Claude Code working for you. I hope this was helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned a little something. Claude Code is constantly changing, so keep it locked in. I'll go over all the interesting features for you as they release, and I'll see you in the next video.
All right, so a lot of us have been building end-to-end workflows for a while now. So today I'm going to show you how you can take any of your end-to-end workflows that you already have and turn that into a web app. And I'm not talking about just showing you something like Lovable to build a front end and then connecting it to your end-to-end webhook. I'm talking about Claude Code having the ability to look at your workflow, essentially audit it to make sure it's ready to go for an app, and then make any of the changes that you need on the back end before you build the front end. But let me show you guys what I actually mean by that. Otherwise, it just sounds like a bunch of gibberish. So here's a workflow that I wanted to turn into a web app. It takes a form submission where we get information from a user like product name, product photo, avatar, features, and video setting, and it turns that into a UGC ad with this workflow as you can see right here. So what I told Claude Code to do was look at this workflow and then just optimize it so I could actually use it and connect it to a front end. And what it did is it changed the workflow to look like this. There are actually a lot of changes that it made here, and I need you guys to believe me when I said I was seriously impressed when I saw this. So real quick, just wanted to put these side by side so you can actually see what it did. On the left was the original, and on the right is what Claude Code built. So first of all, it switched out the form submission trigger to be a webhook. Not too hard, but that's what it did. So if you remember, one of the raw inputs it gets was a photo. So Claude Code actually realized that it's going to come through as a base 64 string when we send it over webhook, and it has to convert that. And then at the end, what we had to do was we had to figure out how did we want this to be displayed in the front end. So we basically are sending back a message whether it was successful or not, and we're sending over the URL so it can be embedded in the actual landing page. And it also changed all of these HTTP requests to be continue with an error output, and it routed the error to a different branch, which would send the front end an error message. And another cool thing to realize is that when it changes the actual source of the input data, it had to change the variables everywhere else. So it really thought about the actual node by node flow, not just changing the input and the output. So if you don't understand all of those changes that I just explained and like why that's important, it's not a huge deal. The point I was trying to make there was just showing you that Claude will look at your workflows and fix them for you before you ever turn them into a front end. And you guys know that my job is to make complex or intimidating things as simple as possible. So that's exactly what I'm going to do today. We're going to walk through it all step by step, and you're going to realize how easy it actually is. So real quick, before we get into that, I just want to do a quick demo of the final product of this that took me basically 40 minutes. Where I started with this workflow, Claude Code turned it into this workflow, and now we have this front end where I can put in the information, and let me just show you guys a quick demo. So I put in some information, I put in a product photo, and I'm gonna go ahead and hit generate, and now what happens is it basically tells us on this right-hand side that we have this one job processing. If I go into the actual end-to-end workflow that it's hitting right now, and I go to executions, you can see that there were some failures when I was doing testing and stuff, but what we're gonna notice is that we get a new execution right here pop through, and then when that's finished, it will automatically display right here where we can see the video and we'll be able to download it. So you can see that the workflow just finished up, and you can see we have our video right here, which is displayed in the website. We can click on this link to download it. And also just for reference, here's the original Cologne image that I uploaded. So you can see that it pretty much looks the exact same. So I'm not going to be diving into this actual workflow that produced the results. I already made a video about this, so if you want to check it out, I'll link it up there. All right, hopefully I'm not losing you already. I know that this workflow and this demo may seem a little bit complex, but we're gonna set up everything step by step from the full process of taking an end-to-end workflow, optimizing it with Claude, and then getting it onto a front end and deploying it. Okay, so step one is open up VS Code. This is where I like to work with Claude Code as an extension because the actual visual interface is just so much cleaner, it's so much better, and you don't have to look at your nasty terminal or anything like that. VS Code's been around for a long time, and it's a very trusted platform. So once you're in here, you're going to click on this left-hand side and go to extensions, and then you're going to type in up here Claude Code. And once you do that, just click on Claude Code and then go ahead and install it. And when you install it, it should prompt you to sign in with your Anthropic, with your Claude account, and that's how you actually link them together. Now, once we have that extension installed, we actually need to start up a project. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to the left-hand side and go up to this button right here, which is the File Explorer, and it says you have not opened a folder yet, so go ahead and open one up. So I'm in my documents, I'm in a folder called Agentic Workflows, and then I'm drilling down to another folder called End-to-End App, which has nothing in it, so it's a blank folder, it's a blank project, and I'm going to select it, which now gets us into this environment. So you can see up top, we've got End-to-End App, which is our project, and on the left-hand side over here, we're going to see all the other files that we add to this or that get created. In the middle is where we're going to actually be chatting with Claude Code, and the way we do that is by clicking on this little Claude Code extension button right here, and then closing out of whatever else we don't want. And on the right-hand side is where we have the actual like VS Code agent chat, which means we can talk to this agent about like what's going on in here. And honestly, I never really use this because the Claude Code agent is smart enough. So that's kind of the interface we're looking at. I know it may seem a bit overwhelming right now because there's lots of new buttons and there's lots of places to look, but I'm basically just going to tell you guys about what you need to know. And if you follow this demo all the way through, by the end of it, you'll have a really good understanding of what you're looking at and how to work with Claude Code. All right, so the first thing that we want to do whenever we start up a new project is we want to give it some sort of guidelines about what are we actually doing in this project. And the way we actually do that is we just have to create a file, which is essentially the system prompt. And it's going to be called claude.md. And so what you could do is come over to the left-hand side and you could click on new file. You could type in claude.md, and then we could basically just start working in this file, or we could have Claude itself edit the file. And the reason why this popped up over here is just so we could view it. You could close it, you could open it back up, you could open up like 10 different files at the same time if you want to, but let's just keep our screen clean and keep open just the Claude Code for now. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is have Claude Code help us write that claude.md file. So let me just read out what I actually wrote to it. So I said, help me create a claude.md file in this project to set up what we wanna do here. This project is essentially built to help me turn my end-to-end workflows into apps. So there's gonna be a few pieces. The first piece is going to look at my workflows in end-to-end to make sure that they're ready to go as far as having the right intake of data and output of data, so that if it's a web app, when the app sends data to end-to-end, it can properly receive it. And then also when end-to-end sends a response back to the front end, it's properly displayed. Just like we saw here in this example, I wanted to make sure that when end-to-end sent the response back to the app, it could be displayed as an embedded video. And I also wanted to make sure that when we sent over a JPEG file to end-to-end, it could receive it properly. Then I came back and said, once we know the workflow's optimized, then we have to start building the front end. So we're going to start building it and testing it in a local environment. And then once we like how the app looks and functions, then we'll push it to GitHub. And GitHub is basically just a home for our code, and it will let us do different versions and see all the changes. And then what happens is our code lives in GitHub, but then we're going to have Vercel sync up to it. And Vercel is where we actually deploy those apps on the web. And I have a diagram to break this down in a few minutes here, but essentially the idea is we work in Claude Code, we push changes to GitHub, and then our actual real web app on the public URL always reflects the most recent version. So it's just super easy. So there's also a couple things that we're going to utilize. One of them will be the end-to-end MCP so that you can understand end-to-end nodes, configurations, templates, and you can look through my end-to-end instance and create and edit workflows and things like that. I'm also going to give you access to two skills, the end-to-end skills and the front-end developer skills. And I'm going to give you access to the GitHub MCP so that you can actually push changes to my GitHub. And then I finished that off by saying, with all that in mind, ask me any questions that you may need and help me make this file concise so that we keep everything neat and lean. So before I send this off, I wanted to talk about these different modes. So right here, you can see I'm on bypass permissions, which is orange. We could go to ask before edits, which is a lighter orange. We could go to edit automatically, which is white. Or we could go to plan mode, which is blue. And so whenever I'm doing something like this, or whenever we're setting up an initial prompt, I always like to use plan mode because it thinks a lot better and it asks you questions, and it basically just lets you guys have a conversation before you actually do anything. So I'm going to go ahead and shoot off this prompt in plan mode, and we're going to see Claude Code think about what it needs to do. It's going to first look through the current structure to see if there's any files. It's going to understand what we're doing here. And you can see right here, it said, before I draft the file, I've got a few clarification questions. So what's the typical structure of the workflow that you want to turn into an app? Right now, let's just say various triggers, because we don't actually know what we want to turn into an app yet. For the project structure, do you have a preferred project structure in mind? I'm just going to say propose structure, whatever, I don't really care. Repo strategy. Should each workflow become its own repo in GitHub? Yep, we'll just do separate repos, one for each app. And then for styling, we'll just go ahead and go with Tailwind CSS. And if you don't know what this stuff means, you can just go ahead and ask it too. That's the beauty of Claude Code, is that we don't have to really understand all the code and exactly what it's doing. We just have to be able to communicate our thoughts clearly. And if we get confused, just ask Claude what it's doing and why, because it's really good at that. So you can see it gave us this plan for the Claude file, and I said, yep, that sounds good. I'm going to go ahead and auto accept. And now it's going to update this Claude MD file, which right now has nothing in it, as you can see. And it's going to basically just write in the system prompt, and you can see that it just happened in real time right there. Okay. Our system prompt is configured. So next, what we have to do is give it access to all of those things that we mentioned, like the skills, the servers, whatever, the MCP. But before we do that, let me just show you guys exactly what we're doing here on a whiteboard so it all makes way more sense. So in my last video, I showed you guys how we can use Claude Code and give it the end-to-end MCP and the end-to-end skills to build workflows for us in our own end-to-end instance. So we're kind of building on top of that here. If you haven't watched that video, that one might be a good one to start with and then come back to this one. So I'll tag that right up here. But essentially, the end-to-end MCP gives Claude Code access to all the nodes, configurations, workflow patterns, things like that. And end-to-end skills gives Claude Code all the knowledge about expressions, how to use this MCP server, how to code, all this kind of stuff. So the TLDR is you're essentially giving one of the smartest brains in the world access to all of the information about end-to-end that you could possibly need. So now we're building on top of that and we're creating web apps. So what we do here is we've got, once again, Claude Code with MCP servers and with different skills. And now what we wanted to do is create us a web app. So in order to create that web app, first of all, we use end-to-end to see the back-end automation that we want to turn into an app. And we create the front end to actually collaborate with that. Now, what is the front end? It's actually just code. So Claude Code is building the code that displays the website. And what we do with that code is we push that to GitHub in something called a repository, or what a lot of people just call a GitHub repo. And then we have Vercel, which actually deploys it on the internet so that other people could access this app. And Vercel is constantly looking at your GitHub repos so that if anything changes over there, you can basically have that change be instantly reflected on your real app. So like with this web app, the actual code for this lives in my Claude Code locally. It's also reflected on GitHub, and then Vercel has deployed it. So let's say I wanted to make this green instead of blue. I could tell Claude Code to change the code to make it green, and then I could say push this to GitHub, so GitHub would grab it, and then Vercel would grab it from GitHub, and then in 20 seconds we would see that this website would be green instead of blue. Hopefully that architecture makes sense now. Let's get back into Claude Code and let's start connecting all these things that we need. So now what I'm doing is I'm saying connect all of these MCP servers and skills and just let me know if you need anything else. So I'm giving it the URL for the end-to-end MCP server. I'm giving it my cloud URL. I'm giving it my end-to-end API key. I'm giving it the GitHub MCP server URL. I'm giving it my GitHub personal access token. I'm giving it the repo for the end-to-end skills, and I'm giving it the repo for the front-end design skills. All of these links that you'll need, I'll just put in the description of this video. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this on bypass permissions mode because I just want it to go without me having to approve everything. So I'm going to go ahead and shoot this off and let it work its magic. And while that's running, I'll show you guys two things. The first one is how do you get bypass permissions mode if you don't see it natively right there? Well, you go to your settings down here, and then you would type in Claude Code. And then right here, you just have to turn this check mark on that says allow dangerously skip permissions. Now, I know it sounds dangerous, but it's not too bad as long as you're watching it and making sure that you're not telling it to go delete all your files and things like that. Now, the second thing I wanted to show you is how to get your GitHub personal access token. So here is my GitHub. All you have to do is just go to GitHub, create an account. It's free to create an account. And then you're going to go up here to your settings. And then at the bottom of your settings, you should see developer settings. And you're going to go ahead and create one of these personal access tokens, and you'll create a fine-grained token. So that's all you have to do. It'll give you basically an API key, and then that's what you're going to give to Claude Code here so that it can set everything up. And when you actually go to create this token, pretty much just give it a name. I leave mine on public repositories. I change the expiration to never. And then the last thing is about permissions. And usually what I do is I just add all of these. There's like 23 or something, but just add all of them. If you realize later you want to restrict something else, you can just go ahead and create a new one or restrict it in Claude Code. It's not a huge deal. And then generate the token and pop it over to Claude Code. And so the other thing to look at, and throughout this tutorial, you might see me use like the /clear or some other things, but if you hit / you can see that there's other things that we can look at. So we can attach a file, we can mention a file from a project, we can switch the model, so we can go from default or Sonnet 4.5, Opus, Haiku. We could also turn on thinking. We can manage our MCP servers, agents, hooks, memory. We can do all of these other / commands as well. And then if you actually use Claude Code in something like Cursor or in the terminal environment, there's even more commands and more things you can do with agents and plan mode and things like that. But like I said, VS Code just makes this all look a lot cleaner and a lot less intimidating, which is why I wanted to do Claude Code on VS Code in this tutorial. So now it's asking me, how would you like me to configure all of this stuff? I'm just going to say create the MCP JSON file because I don't want to do it myself. I just want you to go ahead and take care of all of this stuff. And that's the thing that's interesting about this, because when you go to a lot of these MCP servers or skills, it'll basically tell you installation steps, and it will say, hey, go add this to your Claude Code file, or hey, go install this plugin. And I don't want to actually do that. I just want Claude Code to do it. So all I do is I give it the raw URLs. And what you can see here is when I give it the raw URLs, it just uses its web search tool and it reads the page and understands installation and then just does it. So a lot of times if Claude Code comes back to you and says, hey, what you need to do is do this, you can come back to it and just say, No, you do it. And most of the time it'll just do it. Every once in a while it'll say, I actually can't, I need you to do this. But most of the time you can just tell it to do it for you. Like right here, it says install the skills by running these commands after restart. I'm gonna say, I don't wanna install those commands, can't you just do it for me? And what do you know, done, both skill sets are now installed, so I didn't have to do any of that. So right here we have the MCP JSON file, and this is where you can see we have our end-to-end MCP server and we have our GitHub MCP server. And you'll notice that we don't actually see the skills in here. And the reason why is because the skills were installed globally, not just within this one project that we're working in called end-to-end to app, which is cool because later if we make another project, we already have those skills installed. And if you don't believe me or you get confused, you just ask Claude. I said, why don't I see the end-to-end skills in this project? And it basically just came down and said, yeah, they're installed globally. Here are the 7 end-to-end skills. And for some reason it said 6, so not the best at counting. But then we also have the front-end skill down here. So that's just to prove that they are actually installed, even though you don't see them over here on the File Explorer. Now, something else to keep in mind about this MCP JSON file is that it has your real GitHub token and your real API key in here. So if you've shared this file for some reason or someone had access to this, they would be able to do anything in your end-to-end because they have this information. So obviously I'll be deleting these credentials after this video goes live, but just something else that I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of. That is why typically when you're doing certain things, you're gonna have like a .env file and you'll have your actual scripts and things call on those credentials so they only use them when they need them. And like all those .env files are encrypted. So don't want to confuse you guys. We're not going to dive into that right now. Just something that you should be aware of. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I have to restart Claude Code. Otherwise, it won't actually reflect all that. So really what I'm going to do is just close out of VS Code and then we're going to open it back up and then everything should be all set. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do a / command. I'm going to do /clear just to get rid of this conversation so we can start fresh on a new context. But keep in mind, every time we talk to Claude Code, it's still going to be reading through our claude.md system prompt to understand what we're doing in this project. Okay, so what are we going to turn into a web app? Well, let's make it pretty simple. I've got this workflow here, which is just an AI agent, and it's a chat window here, and it's called Fitness Coach. So in here, I basically just have a system prompt prompting this agent to be a fitness coach with stuff like, weightlifting, working out, some basic nutrition stuff, just so we can make a little demo here. But you can see that this is not ready to go to be turned into a web app. Not really, at least. But all I'm going to do is just tell Claude Code to look for this workflow and help me turn it into a web app. So we're going to go back into Claude Code. I'm going to change this to plan mode because we want to like brainstorm how we're going to do this. And I'm going to say, I've got a workflow in my end-to-end instance called Fitness Coach. I want to turn this into a web app. So before we do that, please take a look at it and help me change it so that it's ready to go and I can talk to it from a front end. So I'll shoot this off and we're basically just going to watch it think. It's going to walk through its steps. And what you can see right now is that it's using the end-to-end MCP to find our workflows. Now it was able to find the fitness coach, so it's going to analyze it. And you can see that it found the workflow, but there's an issue, which is it's using the chat trigger, which is not really designed for a custom front end. So it's going to write up a plan to change this workflow for us. So here it asks, do you want the fitness coach to remember conversation history? Because right now in the actual workflow, there's no memory. So what I'm going to do is say, yeah, that's a great feature. We want the coach to be able to remember like it's having a conversation. Okay, so here it came up with a plan, which is to prepare the fitness coach workflow to be a web app. So it tells us what the problem is. It tells us what it's going to do. So it's going to replace the chat trigger with a webhook. It's going to add a window buffer. It's going to add a window buffer memory. It's going to update all these connections. It's going to configure the agent input, and then it's going to publish the workflow as well. And so we could obviously make some changes here if we want. I want to see how it did on its own. So I'm going to go ahead and just auto accept all these changes. I'm going to make this bypass permissions so that we can just basically see when it's done. And what it does is it creates a to-do list, which is really cool because it helps the actual model stay on track, but it also helps us understand its thought process and what stage it's on. So that way, a lot of times when you're working with Claude Code, you can have it open on one monitor, you can be doing something else, watching a YouTube video, whatever you want to do, and just kind of checking in and making sure that it's staying on the right path. And a lot of times it's not perfect, but what's so cool about Claude Code is that it runs into issues and it analyzes what went wrong and then fixes it. So right here, you can see that there was an error because the key parameter for the session ID for the memory was missing. And so it figured out that the body's actually nested, and then it went ahead and just, changed the workflow after it realized that. So it's all about how much context you give it and how clearly you can explain what you want. And that's also why the planning mode is so helpful. But it looks like that workflow has been updated now. What I'm going to do is go back into end-to-end, which was this workflow right here, and I'm going to hit refresh. And we should now see that the workflow is changed and it should be ready to go for our web app. So we've got a webhook, which is post request. We've got our memory, and let's see if it changed the actual configuration of the user message, which it did. So we also, I noticed, don't have a respond to webhook node. So what it's doing is it's using respond when the last node finishes with the first entry. So I think we should be all right. But later, if we end up needing to change something, we would just say, hey, Claude, this didn't work. Go fix the workflow. All right, so back in Claude, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to clear out this context once again, and I'm going to go back into plan mode, and we're going to talk about what we want this actual web app to look like. Hey Claude, help me create a plan to actually build out this front end for the end-to-end workflow. I want to make sure that in your plan, you're going to be using the front-end designer skill, the end-to-end tools skill, and all of the resources that you have to make this as good as possible. We don't want the web app to look AI vibe coded. We want it to look professional, very minimalistic, and we want it to be super clean. We also want it to be a little bit gamified to incentivize people to come in and to talk to the fitness coach. Maybe we can have the main chat interface, and then on the right-hand side, we can have a little bit of gamification with a tracker for how many times people have talked to the fitness coach, and maybe they can level up after, every 5 or 10 messages or something like that. Ask me clarification questions to make sure that we're not leaving any holes in our plan here, and any suggestions that you may want to make that I didn't yet think of. All right, I'm shooting that off. I'll let you guys know if anything important happens. All right, so I got some questions here. The first one is, which end-to-end workflow should this front end connect to? We're going to do the existing workflow, which it should be able to find. Now we have, what core features should the fitness coach provide when users chat with it? General fitness Q&A, personalized workout plans, progress tracking. Yeah, we'll just do all of these. Gamification. For the gamification system, what should users be leveling up and earning rewards for? Just a message count. Let's just do that. And then what's your preference for user data persistence, remembering their level, message count, things like that. And I'm just going to say, let me decide later. We can get into a bunch of back-end database storage and authentication in different videos. We want to keep this one simple. So for now, we're just going to go with that. Now it's asking for the name or ID of the existing fitness coach workflow, the one that it found earlier. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in the name or ID. And honestly, now that I think about it, it probably would have been better if I didn't clear the context and we just kept talking on that previous thread. But what are you going to do? Some more questions now. What color scheme or brand aesthetic do you want? I'm going to go with dark mode primary. The app name, let's just go with, Fit Coach AI. And then mobile layout, should the gamification panel be visible on mobile or only larger screens? We're just going to go with always visible, keep things nice and easy. All right, so the plan for the Fit Coach AI web app is done. There's tons of stuff in here with structure, tech stack, key features, all this kind of stuff. Obviously, you would read through this and make some changes if you want, but we're just going to see how Claude Code does on its own. So I'm going to go ahead and auto accept those changes. And of course, what it's going to do is set up a to-do list, as you can see right here. So I'll just check in with you guys when we have something ready to test. Okay, so there we go. The to-do list has been completed and Fit Coach AI is ready. You can see that it's actually living right now on a local host, which basically just means only we could access this. So if I gave you this exact, HTTP address, it would pull up your own local host, whatever you're hosting on 3002. So what we need to do is make sure it works here. And then you can see when you're ready, we'll initialize the Git and we'll push it to GitHub and then we'll deploy it to Vercel. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this local host and let's take a look at what we've got. All right, so this is the Fit Coach AI interface that it came up with. And you can see we've got ready to crush your goals. You can try creating a 30-minute HIIT workout. What should I eat after working out? How do I stay motivated to exercise? We've got some stats over here. So we've been a member since January 14th. We've got rookie level 1, 11 points to the next. We've got a roadmap. So it did everything that we were looking for. Let's see if it's actually able to talk to our end-to-end workflow. So I'm going to start off by just saying, hey there. We'll shoot this off. And let's see if we get some sort of response back. Okay, cool. So it gave us a response, but it doesn't look great, as you can see, because what happens is in end-to-end, when we respond, we get the whole JSON body. So we get the output and then we get all this other stuff. So if I actually go to the fitness coach workflow, we go to executions, we can see that when Claude Code changed the workflow, it did everything right, which is great. But the actual output of the fitness coach is this JSON body. So basically the front end displays this JSON body rather than just the actual output, which is what we wanted to display. So super easy. What we're going to do is we are going to, of course, go back into Claude Code and just tell it to fix that. So what I'm going to do is take a screenshot of this output just so that Claude Code can see exactly what I'm talking about. We'll go back in here. I'll paste that in. So it's working good, but when the agent responds to us in the app, it actually displays the entire JSON body. We don't want to see the field called output. We just want to see the actual output itself. And for something simple like this, I'm not even going to go into plan mode because it's a very easy request. So it should just be able to change the front end to configure just displaying the actual output. All right, sweet. So it said that it fixed that. I'm going to go back in here and I'm going to say, what's the best time of day that I should be working out and eating? So just something random. I'm going to shoot that off. And hopefully this time we only get back the actual output that we're looking for. Another thing that I am noticing though, is nothing's actually happening on the gamification side. So I imagine that this should be giving us points each time that we get a message back. As you can see, we did get a better output now, although I don't like that it's coming with like markdown and bold. So that's something that we would actually change in the system prompt of the agent here rather than in the front end development. So not a huge deal, but we're not getting any points. So that's the next thing that we have to tell Claude to fix. Awesome, that change worked. But now the issue is we're not actually getting any gamification. So I've sent 2 messages now, but we still have 0 points on the app itself. So fix that. Okay, so it looks like it reset some stuff with local storage and whatever this is talking about. Now let's go ahead and try again. It seems like that should have fixed. Although now we have to see if we can refresh the page. So this is the actual local host that we were supposed to be using the app on, but there's some sort of issue here even when I refresh. So let me take a screenshot of this and send this over to Claude Code. I can't access the app anymore. Okay, so it says that it rewrote everything with a simpler approach. We should need to try to refresh, and there we go. Cool, so we actually do have our 2 messages that we already sent. Let's just say create a 30-minute HIIT workout, shoot that off, and hopefully when the agent responds, we'll get another point on the right-hand side. Cool, we did. So we got the response, and we also got another message. Now, finally, before we actually push this to GitHub, I wanted to show you guys that we could change the system prompt with Claude Code. So one last request. Awesome, that's working. My last request is that the agent is responding with markdown formatting and bold stuff. So I wanted to just respond in complete natural language, paragraph form, like an actual human would. So go ahead and make that change in the end-to-end workflow and update the system prompt of the AI agent. All right, cool. So the end-to-end workflow has been updated. It went ahead and changed the system prompt so that now it should only be responding in natural language. I'm just gonna go ahead and go to the workflow and refresh it. Make sure everything is all set. Looks like we've got it saved. It's still published. So let's just do one final test in here. So I set it like that because I want to make sure that the memory's working. I want to make sure that it comes back and responds to us in natural language only, no formatting. And that once again, we will get the extra message. Okay, so we still got a little bit of bold things and we'd probably just have to go back. But what I wanted to actually make sure of was that in here, it actually did change the system prompt, which you can see that it did. So I guess maybe we just weren't explicit enough at actually how to prompt it. But the point I was trying to make, which is what I think is really important, is that what we just did is we had a random workflow. We had Claude Code look at it, optimize it for a front end. We built the front end, and then we went back and forth with Claude Code when the front end wasn't working how we wanted it to. And then we also had Claude Code change the actual backend end-to-end workflow itself. So everything that we're doing here is just using our natural language to Claude Code and just speaking very clearly about what we want. And that's obviously a good example. I wasn't clear enough about the way that I want it to respond, so I would just have to go back one more time. But now let's actually move on to the next step here where we're going to take the code and we're going to push it to GitHub and then have that automatically sync with Vercel. So first of all, what you need to do, of course, is go ahead and go to GitHub. So this is my GitHub. You've already made your access token to give it to Claude Code. But now what we need to do is create a repo. So I'm going to go up here, create new. I'm going to click on new repository. I'm just going to call this fitcoach-ai since that is our name of our app. And then I'm just going to do -app. I'm not going to do a description. We'll just leave it public. I'm not going to add a readme or a git ignore, any of that kind of stuff. I literally just added a name and I'm going to create that repository. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the actual URL up at the top in my browser and copy that. Go back into Claude Code. We're going to go ahead and, let's just keep going in the same context window. I'm going to say, here is the GitHub repo for this app, paste in the URL and say, please push this to GitHub so we can sync it with Vercel and get it live, get it deployed. So I'm going to shoot that off. I'm also leaving it once again on bypass permissions because this is a pretty simple request. And now it's going to go ahead and do that for us. And now in the GitHub repo, you can see there's nothing here, but what's going to happen is it will get all of our files will be pushed to this environment. And once again, as you're working with GitHub and Vercel, you can ask Claude Code any of the questions you may have about how they work together or why it's important, and it will get back to you. All right, cool. So the code has been pushed to GitHub. Now it says next steps would be to go to Vercel and import that repository. And then it also says to add the environment variable, which would be our actual webhook. But we'll take a look at that when we get there. So let's go to GitHub real quick. And if I refresh this repo, we can now see that we have these files in here. And basically these are the files that hold the code of our Fit Coach app. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Vercel, which is right here. This is the UGC one that I was looking at earlier. And what's going to happen is you can see that this is pulling from my GitHub repo for this code. So what I'm going to do here is click on add new. We're going to add a new project. And I should be able to see import git repository. And right here we have our Fit Coach AI app. So I'm just going to go ahead and click import on that repo. And now I could change the name or the team or the preset or whatever I want to do, but I'm just going to go ahead and click deploy. All right, cool. So we just deployed this project. I'm going to go back out to my dashboard and I'm just going to show you guys how you can get there. So if I go back home, you can see the different projects that you have in your Vercel. So if I just give this a refresh, we can see we have the Fit Coach app. So I click into that. What you can look at here is deployments. So every time you have a new version, you can see when it was actually uploaded. We can look at our logs. We can look at gateways, storage. We can look at all this kind of stuff. But right now, what I wanted to do was actually just click on the project itself so we can go to that domain, which is fitcoach-ai-app.vercel.app. So if I open that up, this is what we see. And we're no longer on localhost. Now we are on this domain, which means that if I gave you guys this URL, you could access this and you could talk to like my n8n instance and all that kind of stuff. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to say, how do I stay motivated? And what we get is a server configuration error. And so we need to figure out what happened here. So the first thing that I want to look at is I'm going to go to my actual n8n workflow and I'm going to go to executions. Now what happens here is we don't see that execution that we just did. So what that tells me in my brain is that we have our front end deployed on the web. We have n8n deployed on the web, but for some reason, they're not talking to each other. So when I hit this button, which says, like when I send the message, when I hit that button, normally what that does is it sends this string of text to the n8n webhook. But for some reason, that's not configured. So if you remember, we went back into Claude Code and it says to add the environment variable, which is our n8n webhook, and then we have the actual webhook to hit. So this is one of those examples like I was talking about earlier, where we have an environment variable that only gets called when we need it. And so the reason why Claude Code built it like this is because they didn't want anyone to be able to look at the GitHub repo and find our URL for our n8n webhook. Now, in this case, I don't really care because if I have a webhook, I could set up my own authentication so that only people that make an account can actually talk to it. But it's important to think about because if I gave you guys this URL and I didn't have any, webhook security, someone could spam it thousands of times and it would cost me money because it's on my n8n with my OpenAI credentials or my OpenRouter credentials. So in this case, what you would do is you would add the environment variable. So you would come into, where'd my Vercel go? So we'd actually be able to add that by going in here. We'd go to our settings. We could scroll down here to environment variables, and we would basically just add one, and we would have the key be n8n_webhook_URL, and then we put in the actual URL. And that way Vercel would understand to call on it when we hit that button. But in this tutorial, I just want to keep things pretty simple. So what I'm going to do is just go back to Claude Code and just tell it, don't do the environment variable, just hard code my webhook in the code, because I also wanted to just show you guys how we can push that change instantly to Vercel. I don't want to use my webhook as an environment variable. Please just change the code so the webhook URL is hard coded in there. It's going to make it much more simple. Okay, so now the webhook URL has been hard coded into the code and we have to redeploy that. So I'm going to import the changes to GitHub. You can see in my Vercel, it's rebuilding this real quick. And in GitHub, if I refresh, you can see that now there are 2 commits. So every time that you change the code and you push it to GitHub, it will have another version here. So that way you can see what happened each time. And now you can see that this has been redeployed onto our app in Vercel. So I'm going to go to the new landing page and we're just going to try to ask another question. So design a beginner strength routine. And this time it's actually working. It looks like it's writing back some sort of response because it did hit our n8n webhook. That's at least the hypothesis here. Cool. So now it responded with much more natural language, which is cool. You know what I think actually happened last time is maybe we just didn't like publish the most recent version. But anyways, in the fitness coach end-to-end workflow, I'm going to refresh this. We're going to see if we got that execution, which is right here. And we know it worked in this case because the actual post request that got sent over was design a beginner strength routine, which is exactly what we just said in our app right here. And I would also feel a little bit bad if one of you guys followed this tutorial and then woke up with like thousands of, credits spent on your account. So another thing you can do is they have like a security review function in Claude Code. And obviously Claude Code with Opus 4.5 is going to be really, really good at like reading your code and understanding if there's vulnerabilities, which is something that you should, regularly just say, hey, by the way, like what should I be aware of and what like risks do I have? So I basically said here, do a full security review of anything that I've pushed to GitHub to make sure that I don't have any credentials exposed online because my GitHub repo is public and my workflow is, out there too. So it searched through everything and it said, okay, cool. So your hard-coded end-to-end webhook is out there, which I told it to do that. It's fine. I understand that. And that basically just means that people could see this and then hit the webhook directly. So that is a problem, but if you set up your own authentication on the back end, or obviously this is just a demo, so I'm not too worried. And the recommendation would be to move this to an environment variable. And then it also talked about my credentials, which is something I brought up to you guys earlier, which is the fact that those are all stored in this MCP file. So in this JSON file, I have my credentials for GitHub and end-to-end. So if someone got this file, that could be a big problem too. But this file is stored locally. So I basically said to it, hey, why do I have to rotate my credentials? Aren't they safe in my local environment? And it basically said, yeah, you're right. Your credentials are safe. I was being overly cautious because this file is not in the GitHub repo. It's not online. It only exists locally on your machine. And I know that this project itself right here, like this app, isn't anything too complex or like super impressive. But the idea is now that you understand like this whole framework and how everything works together, you can continuously iterate upon this. And you can maybe even add more end-to-end workflows in the back end using the help of Claude Code, fixing things on the front end, adding different functionality, pushing it back to GitHub, and then it continuously gets better. Because think about it. With something like this, it's really your imagination because you can control what you want on here. Maybe you want somewhere where they can upload progress pictures or a food logger or a workout logger, things like that. And then by default, when you deploy something on Vercel, it'll have the domain that ends in .vercel.app. And so you will want to buy a domain somewhere else or just buy one right here in Vercel and connect it. And it's pretty simple. You would pretty much just click on this plus right here and you could either buy a domain or add a domain. You'll have to do something with the DNS records if you're transferring in a domain from like Namecheap or Squarespace or wherever you bought the domain, but it's super simple. You just have to go in there and change like an A record. And it may seem a little confusing, but just have ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude walk you through it. It's really easy. Or Claude Code. Just have Claude Code tell you how to do it. And then the last thing I had to talk about, because I know there's going to be tons of comments about this, is the Claude plan. So yes, you could 100% start on Pro because you do get access to Claude Code if you're on the Pro plan. But I will say you probably will reach your limit pretty quickly. But I really wouldn't stress this. It's just one of those things where start on Pro. If you hit your limit, okay, go upgrade to the $100 a month plan. If you hit your limit on the $100 a month plan, upgrade to the $200 a month plan. And I know $200 a month sounds expensive, but if you think about how much you can do, and if you think about how much would it cost for me to pay like a top tier developer to do this kind of stuff, it is significantly more than $200. So that 200 is going to be a huge bang for your buck. Once again, if you're on 200 a month and then you realize you're not using it all the way and it's not worth it, then just downgrade. It's not going to be permanent. Okay, so we just covered a ton of information. So let's just recap what we just did. First of all, what we did is we connected Claude Code to the end-to-end MCP server to look through how end-to-end works and to be able to go into our instance, get workflows, create them, edit them, publish them, all that kind of stuff. And then we gave it access to the end-to-end skills so it actually knows how to use that server and how to build end-to-end workflows. After that, we were able to have Claude Code optimize the workflows to be ready for a front-end deployment. So we also gave it access to a front-end designer skill. We gave it access to the GitHub MCP so that as we're building this web app and we're hosting it and testing it locally, once we have that code ready to go, then we push it to GitHub, which automatically syncs with Vercel and then deploys it on the web. So now other people can actually access your app. It's not just on your own local environment. And then of course, because of this whole framework, as soon as you update the code and push it to GitHub, it automatically will update on the web. And now that you're already in this project called end-to-end app or whatever you called yours, if you wanted to, you could just do another workflow in this project because you already have the Claude MD file, you already have your MCP server set up, you already have your skills set up globally, you have this folder right here, which is all the stuff you need for this app. But if we wanted to, we could obviously just come into here, we could clear out this conversation history, and we could say, okay, cool. Now I want to build a front end for this other app and just go through that whole process again. And because all of this is stuff that it can look through, it could maybe even take inspiration from other apps that you've done in the past. All right, so like I said, Claude Code is super cool, and it's something that it's been really, really impressing me, which is why I'm diving so much deeper into it and why I plan to bring a lot more Claude Code content to my channel. So please let me know what in Claude Code is confusing you guys, what else you want to see, what type of use cases, as we get into more and more automation building in Claude Code that's not actually built on n8n. But that's going to do it for today's video because I know that was a lot, but I hope that you enjoyed or I hope that you learned something new. I know it's intimidating, but just stick with it. I think it's really, really going to be worth it if you learn these skills now. But as always, I appreciate you guys making it to the end of the video, and I'll see you all in the next one. So thanks so much, everyone.
The creator of Claude Code just revealed his entire workflow. I studied every step he shared, and some of them blew my mind. And in this video, I'm going to show you the exact system from the creator of Claude Code so that you can ship apps 100 times faster at a far better quality, even if you've never coded before. And if you don't know who I am, my name is Jack Roberts. I built and installed my last tech startup with over 60,000 customers, and now I run a 7-figure AI automation business. So if you haven't already, grab that coffee and let's dive straight in. So Claude Code is an incredibly powerful model, and here are the secrets behind it. Now, this is Boris, the creator of Claude Code, which actually started as a side project in 2024, and now it does over $1 billion in annually recurring revenue. It is most people's first coding model of choice. Now, Boris himself has committed 40,000 lines of code in the last month alone. So I started to say he's using it all the time, and the things he has to say are super insightful. And what he shared can really be distilled down to 5 core principles that will improve the way that you use any kind of AI coding at all. Now, this is also, you can ship basically 10 times faster at better quality. Now, where does Google anti-gravity fit into this? Because we've spoken about that quite a lot on the channel, and it is a game-changing coding environment. Well, the best way to think about it is that your coding app is like a fighter jet, right? There are many different options with Cursor, anti-gravity, windsurf, and the model that we use within anti-gravity, within these what we call integrated development environments, these IDEs, is like your fighter jet pilot. It's like your fighter jet team, and we can install whichever pilot we want to for any particular use case. So we can use anti-gravity with Claude Code and also Gemini 3 completely based on whatever kind of outcome we're trying to get. And Boris's complete breakdown fits very nicely into a 5-step system called Coder. And the first C stands for configure. Now, in our jet pilot analogy, no jet pilot on the planet will ever leave before doing a very comprehensive checklist to make sure that everything's in order so they actually have the fuel and they can get to the destination. And Claude Code is no different. And so if we open up anti-gravity, for example, how do we do this? Well, the first thing that Boris recommends doing, which is so true, is creating a Claude.md file for every single project. For example, just come down here, new file. I'm going to call this one, if I come here on the left-hand side, we'll just literally call it Claude.md. Now, if you're using anti-gravity or Cursor, you can use the terminal within this software, but what's really easy to do is actually, if you come on the left-hand side to extensions and you type in Claude, you can add this extension. And what that basically means is that when you double-click in the middle, you'll open a new tab and you can click on this Claude thing here, which is now Claude Code within anti-gravity. So what do we really include within this Claude.md file to make the project way better? What is our pre-flight checklist? Well, it turns out there's lots of really interesting things. So what I did is I actually pulled together, based on all of his best practices, what he should include in Claude.md. And I come down and grab this for you because I thought it was really, really interesting. So if I come down to Claude Code and open this Claude.md, there's a couple of things that we really want to make sure that we cover. And I'll share this down below so you can just grab this and use this for all your projects. And the idea is that you copy and paste this for everything. So whatever the project is, you give this to Claude. So for example, we want to specify things like the tech stack. We want to be clear on the key directories that are involved. We can be clear on the commands. But what's really interesting, I thought, was this idea that what you want to give Claude crucially in the Claude.md file is that you want to be clear on what the success criteria is and how it actually checks that. So for example, if we're building a beautiful interactive website, we want people to say to Claude, by the way, you know that you've hit the mark when you've done A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and this is how I actually want you to test it. So the idea is that we treat this like a living, breathing document. So you copy all of this, you head over to your coding environment of choice. You can literally then give the command to Claude to say, hey, I want you to amend the Claude.md file with the below project scope for my project. Ask me questions to fill this out. And then what you do is you can shout with Claude Code on the left-hand side to fill this out, and then Claude.md will become way more comprehensive, and the actual effectiveness of the model when it's building you anything goes through the roof. And the other thing to call out here, which I thought was really interesting, is the actual model that we're physically using here, which you can access by in /model. And so pretty much for anytime using Claude Code, always be using Opus 4.5 for every single task in what you're building. And the other thing to add in, as you're building out your project, if Claude Code misbehaves in any way, what's really important is you come back to these system instructions and update it so that its actual modus operandi is always evolving and changing. Remember, it's the backbone of every single project and the best place to start. And now we've completed our pre-flight checklist and we have the backbone. None of that is relevant unless we're very clear on the mission for Claude Code, which every single project needs to start with. We would never leave the runway unless we're clear on the mission and the destination. And it's the exact same thing when we're building these beautiful applications in Claude Code. And so the second part of our codes framework stands for outline. And this one is really cool. And something I found personally great in all the apps that I've built is that you want to spend 95% of the time on the problem and defining success before you build it. The better and clearer we can be, the better the outcomes. So the idea with this is that you can come down to Claude Code, type in Shift and Tab until it gets into plan mode. This is its awesome thing. And so once you have plan mode activated, you basically want to have a conversation with Claude in plan mode. Now, Boris recommends that you actually go back and forth. So for example, if I said, hey there, dude, I want to build a very simple website that tells me the weather in 3 locations, London, Dubai, and New York City. I really want you to help me understand and define what the problem is in detail and create all the specifications for the app so that we're very, very clear on it. Please ask me clarificatory questions if none of this is clear and help me understand any gaps in my understanding so we can create a very clearly defined project document. Cool. So we put that one out there, and then we can also add in ultra think as well, which lets it think deeply. Now, the cool thing that I thought that Boris touched on here is that before he even starts building, he'll go back and forth with it in this plan mode before we even write a single line of code. And the idea is that the better the plan is and the better to kind of, if you think of it as the architecture, right, the actual specifics of where we're going, the way better the project will actually become. And as you can see here, we've even got way more information here. So it's asking us different questions like detailed. And I think it's really cool that in the UI, we can actually come down and select all the different things that we want. We want it to on page only, and you can get the API choice. So you may say, hey, I want to do is like API keys and the tech stack. You can pretty much be specific on the things that you would like there. So now we've got our pre-flight checklist. We know exactly what we're doing and we've got a beautiful plan. The next thing we need to do is actually go to our destination, but we're not going to do that alone. We're actually going to do that instead of 1 jet pilot. We're going to do it with 10, which is why the third step in our 5-step framework here stands for deploy in parallel. Now, the idea of this is that we're not just going to release 1 agent on the task. We're going to release 5, 6, 7. Now, Boris says he actually has 5 agents running simultaneously within his actual desktop, as well as using one other very interesting thing. Now, there's actually 2 ways we can do this. One that he uses and the other one with an anti-gravity. Now, anti-gravity, for example, here, as you can see, is a beautiful interface. We have agent manager. We have lots of things. We can use Gemini. What you can do with anti-gravity is you see this Claude Code logo. I can literally click it like this, right? Now I can have 3, 4, 5 different instances of Claude Code, these individual Claude agents, all doing something for us simultaneously. But one of the only drawbacks of using anti-gravity is that your laptop can sometimes heat up and melt if you're not running on like the latest, biggest thing ever. So what Boris does, I want to show you this as an alternative if you want to, is actually running these Claude things in the terminal. And the way you can open the terminal is command space, and you can literally type in T for terminal, and then the whole thing will pop up. Now, this looks a little bit codey, but you can actually type in Claude here. Now, one of the advantages of doing it in the terminal is that when you run it through anti-gravity or cursor, it adds a lot of other things to it. It's got the coding layer, it's got all these different things. It is faster and more direct if you use a terminal, which basically means that there's less operational like drag on your laptop. And all you do with this is you type in Claude, obviously once you've installed it and all that sort of stuff. But what he will do here is, I think if you do Command Shift I, you can actually rename the tabs. So I could call this one, for example, Terminal 1, which is cool. And you can create multiple of these by doing Command T, Command T, Command T, Command T. So now we have 5 different things. And again, we can name them by do Command Shift I. You can see we call this one too. And then we come down to this one, like so, and we call this one 3, and so on and so on and so forth. And we can literally, if I come down here, actually rename this one. You name them all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, and now we can have multiple versions of this running for us simultaneously in the background. And we just come down here and we call this one Claude. And again, now we'll have multiple versions of Claude running on there. But the question is, how do I get this to work on my projects? Well, all you do is you type in CD in a space, and then all you do is drag over the folder that you want to. So I grab one from my desktop, I can drop it in there. That's the Teddy website. I hit enter, and then that will work for us instantaneously. And now this is working within, if you think of it like that project space for us. And so by using these multiple agents, you can code way faster and build things and actually set them all on individual different tasks. But on top of that, one of the things that he revealed that he does, I thought was really interesting, that I'm now going to start doing myself, is actually using the Claude Code web. So if you head over to Claude.ai, what you can do is on the left-hand side, click on code. I'll open up a brand new tab, and these are online web agents. So one of the cool things that Claude Code has done is it kind of lets you just like code on your desktop and also your web. Now the thing is with Claude Code, right? It's working so long as our laptop is open. But what if you and I are heading to the gym to a big, beautiful workout, or we're buying a Teddy jumper or whatever the thing is, and we don't really have our laptop open? Well, this is a perfect use case of when you would use Claude AI code online. And what we can do is connect it to a repo. So for example, I've got my website here, which is Scale with Teddy, right? I open this up and show you, this is my agency, how we work with businesses, that kind of thing, right? But let's say that I'm at the gym and I have an idea like, dude, wouldn't it be cool if I changed one thing on this website? Or I say I want to add in a new contact form, or I want to update my followers on YouTube or something like that. How would that work? Well, let's just see as an example, right? If I come over to this now, I can say, hey there, dude, could you update the number of followers I have displaying on YouTube to 92,000? Cool. And what this will prompt you to do, by the way, is connect it to your GitHub repo. I gave it access to all of it. So once it connects to GitHub repo, it can just do it. Now, this is just a very simple idea, but I can actually set it up to different projects. Like, I want you to integrate a new XYZ, or I really want you to think on something. So one of the things that Boris does is he'll spin up multiple of these, 4 or 5 of them, whilst he's going to sleep, and set them in these recursive loops. So they're working and working and working for hours at a time in the background. So when he wakes up, he's got all the code that he can check and deploy. We click on select repo. So this one's going to be the Teddy AI website. So if I set this one here, which is for the website, and then literally now I've given it a prompt, I can do this off. I'm just going to show you how cool this is to work. But basically, we set it off, and it'll literally go ahead now and do that for us. We can enable notifications. So it lets us know, which is freaking cool. And this will now work for us in the background whenever we're doing anything. But again, we can make it way more complicated. This is just enables you to take your ideas to coding and let it run for you either when you're sleeping or you're on the move and you don't have time to whip up anti-gravity or your terminal and code for you automatically. Meaning you can actually code and develop way more apps way quickly, and it can always be working for you as a coding agent 24/7. And as you can see, guys, it's already done it. It's taken 80K and updated it to 92K, and it did that in just a couple of seconds. So now we have a beautiful team of multiple agents working with simultaneously, and they're doing it whilst we're asleep or on the move, wherever we are. So our workflow productivity is really high. But next thing we need to do is scale with automation, which brings us on to the 4th step of our 5-step framework, and that is extend with automation. And from Boris's point of view, the creator of Claude Code, I thought this was really interesting. So one of the ways that we do this that's unique within Claude Code is we create these agents. And again, it works exactly the same way within anti-gravity, but I'll show what it looks like within Claude Code. You basically can / and go for agents. Now, the idea of an agent, it's kind of, every Claude Code conversation has a context window of a few 100,000 tokens, right? So the idea of this is, let's say that we are creating a YouTube video, right? And we want to talk about titles, we want to talk about introductions, we want to talk about scripting. What we would do is spin up a separate agent for each of those things. So what you can do here is actually ask Claude to create an agent. You can / agents like this. And then when you open it up, you can see you can create personal or project agents. And the idea then is that you want to create multiple agents for various different things, describe what the agent does, and it'll help you with that. And then when you're talking to Claude Code, you can actually summon that agent for various different things. And now we've scaled with automation. That very nicely takes us on to the 5th and final step of our Coder framework, which stands for review and verify. Now, just like in our fighter jet pilot, every trip, every mission needs a review to make sure that it went successfully. And Claude Code is no different. And this would be something that you would add within your Claude.md file. But effectively, what we need to do is give to Claude very clear success criteria of whether or not it's done its job. So for example, if I paste just a couple of things in here, success criteria would be the code runs without errors, all the tests have passed. So for example, in our web app, we may say, hey, when you hover over the card, it rotates, or that it gives you all the information and it loads without errors. Things like no linting warnings, feature works is requested. I can understand what's changed detailed explanation. You can also give it the task as a very highly skeptical senior developer. But the key is that we give Claude almost like a checklist of, hey, this is what success looks like. This means it's passed, and this means that it hasn't. So Claude could understand whether or not it's actually done its job properly. One little side hack I want to give you as well when you're coding in with these models is that sometimes less prompting is better than more. And this came out from some of the conferences I watched with Anthropic, which I thought was a really interesting takeaway. And the idea is that it's really good at kind of like getting it sometimes. So occasionally just give it a little bit of a shorter prompt with things to see if it can actually hit your goals better than you by over explaining it. So to reiterate, we have this codes framework: configure your foundations, outline before you build, deploy in parallel, extend with automation, and then review and verify. And now you know how to build within Claude Code just like the creator of the application. The next thing is to learn how to take all these key things into systems that can actually grow and scale your business, which you can learn by watching this video right here.